Hi, welcome to Pasture Summit's Vidcast today. I'm Colin Armour. I'm chair of the Pasture Summit Committee. The committee members are spread the length and breadth of New Zealand and are all enthusiastic about dairy farming. Today's video comes to you with the help of DairyNZ. We thank them for their involvement in that. Pasture Summit is run by farmers for farmers, and we hope you today enjoy this video. It's the first of many, we hope, and we would really appreciate your feedback via our Pasture Summit website. Thank you very much.
Well, g'day guys, my name's Kevin McKinley. I'm a consulting officer for DairyNZ in the Bay of Plenty region, based out of Rotorua, and I look after the patch from Rerewhakaitu through to Tauranga, Te Puke and Katikati. It's my great pleasure to be involved in this Pasture Summit discussion today with two inspiring young guns for the future, inspirational members of the Pasture Summit team. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Daniel Woolsey from Southland and Robbie Ferris from King Country. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, g'day, Kevin.
So our brief for today, guys, is to discuss autumn and winter farm management decisions, and particularly with regard to setting up for next season. And setting up for next season to achieve high operating profits, not just to set up for next season. So I just wanted to note at this stage that both of you, I've seen your numbers, are running at significantly higher operating profits per hectare than the benchmarks for your regions in the islands. And I think when I looked at them, $500 to $1,000 per hectare on average per year. So just to kick off, Dan, would you like to give us a few details about where you farm and your farming operation?
Sure. So today I will be focusing on our home property, which is based in Gorge Road, which is sort of coastal eastern Southland. We peak milk 1,200 cows here on 430 hectares through 2 cow sheds. We produce 550,000 milk solids, give or take, each year. We're a rolling contour, heavy artificial drain soils, 1,300 mils a year. And just so you know, we went to 25% of the herd at home on brassica and beet crops. Just a couple of, I suppose, farming principles or focuses for us is first it's got to be a simple system that's replicable. Pasture first and foremost. The aim is to drive high profit business, as you talked about, giving us surplus cash. We aim for a 5-year average of a $3.60 farm working expenses, which we're currently achieving. Also, yeah, 3,500 EFS a hectare is our 5-year average as well. So long may these $7 payouts continue. We also enjoy employing capable people, and we make sure that they buy into our system and they also know what we're trying to achieve. But the main one is to have a consistent and sustainable business. So those are the two big ones for us at the end there, is consistent and sustainable.
Thanks, Dan. That's pretty cool. So those high operating profits that you're generating, what's the plan? How are you going to spend those?
We've all got different ways of spending them. Mine's on debt, mate.
Awesome. Good on you. Yeah. All right. So we just finished with Dan telling us about his farm, where his operation was. So how about you, Robbie? Tell us a bit about your farm and your farming operation.
Yep, so the farm we're on, Kevin, we're in the Central Plateau, 235 effective hectares, 760 cows, and predominantly we're all grass, with roughly about 50 to 100 kilos of bought-in supplement a cow. And the goal is that's been coming down, and we want to keep that coming down. All the cows are wintered on the dairy platform, and the heifers come home 20th of July.
Nice. So you use the crop for the wintering, and the imported feed is more for wintering as well, is it?
Yeah, it is. So the imported feed comes around and going into winter generally, just for a few light cows that need condition and things like that. So it's a little bit seasonal dependent, and then the 5% of the dairy platform goes into crop each year to winter the cows at home. Yep.
Right, thanks, Robbie. Tell us about any overall sort of farming principles or philosophies that you might have.
Yeah, very similar to Dan, to be honest, Kevin. It's profit, pasture, and people, essentially. So we run a simple system, and that looks after the people and their families. So what we expect in return for that is that they look after the pasture and they look after the profit of the business, essentially. And that goes back to the shareholders of the farm, really, of the business.
Cool, thanks for that. So just coming back to where we are at the moment, it's been a bit of a challenging season across the country, and for different reasons, I guess. Up in Robbie's part of the world, it's been probably dry, and down in, or certainly in the autumn, and down in Dan's, I guess it's been wet pretty much the whole year. So Dan, do you just want to highlight sort of what the current situation is on your farm at the moment, with regards to maybe pasture cover, body condition?
Sure. In general, looking pretty good. We're sitting on a 2300 average cover on a 40-day round with no supplements going in. The last body condition score was 4.3. We aim to have all our cows as close to 5 as possible. We also plan to milk through till the end of May, so just so the North Island crew know that we're still milking at the moment. We're sitting with 80 surplus cows on board at the moment due to space at the freezing works due to COVID. I'll just go back a wee bit here. Probably the big challenge for this year for us, the Southland, and excuse me, I'm probably talking for a lot of the South Island, was a wet spring, and we were wet, and I mean stalls at field capacity right through to Christmas. And that put pressure on our feed supplies, body condition score of our animals, even the mental wellness of our farm team. But it left us with severely damaged pastures, half a condition score, lower body condition at planned start of mating, and also our regrassing and our crops ended up being 6 to 8 weeks late. So, and we didn't see a blade of surplus feed until sort of mid to late January. In the end, mating went well. We were sub 10% empty rate in 10 weeks, and now we're set up to finish the autumn okay, I suppose. So so Southland has had some challenges through this tough season, but what we're heading into this year is crop yields are low across the province. The amount of supplement harvested across everybody's farms is lower than normal. And I mentioned before the body condition score was lower than desired, and now the pressure with space at the freezing works is really putting pressure on autumn feed. So just while I'm here, I'll put a plug, but really just want to stress the importance of keeping in communication with your graziers or your grazing agents, just to make sure that the dry stock farmers, their sheep, beef and dairy graziers who haven't been immune to this as well, are facing these same challenges as well. So at the moment, everything's looking pretty good.
Those are good points, Dan, particularly that communication with those graziers. They've been through exactly the same scenario, haven't they? So that's really important. What are some of the areas that you've been sort of focusing on over the last 6 to 8 weeks to get to where you are now?
Right. So because of the challenges that we've had, decision making, I guess, happens pretty quickly and quite often sometimes without a calculator. But the first thing that we did was we scanned as early as possible, so I could see a few things sort of coming to their head. So scanned 45 days after the bulls come out. We culled them straight away, and there'll be a graph come up in front of you for this. But our growth versus demand. If you look at our growth versus demand, I start culling I suppose it's February, March. Yeah, first lot of culls go away in early February. The empties go away start of March, and we push our feed that those cows will be eating out to a 30-day round. Basically, we just continue to cull, and we continue to push that feed in front of us. We always get a small surplus of feed in March, and we use that to push out to a 40-day round. I've been thinking about how I can put a figure on this, but I talk to a lot of farmers in Southland. They sit on a 30-day round through most of autumn, And I try and push a lot of them to say, hey, if I don't get out to a 40-day round and push that feed in front of you, it's literally 20 days worth of feed in autumn. It's grass-growing grass. And for us, that's 1,050 animals. That's a lot of feed. That's 380 tonnes worth of feed. Or at 40 cents per kg of dry matter, you're talking $150,000 worth of supplements that I'm not putting in by pushing out to a 40-day round. So definitely culling early and pushing the feed has really set us up this year especially, but it's something we do every year, but it's really paying dividends now. We're in a good situation. Body condition scoring on the 1st of March, it's a definite. If anything's under 4, goes to once a day. Body condition score again on the 1st of April. And that's usually when we will make a decision on what going forward for April and May. And this year, our herd average ended up at 4.3 at the 1st of April, and we ended up putting all cows on once a day. And I'm sure I'll probably talk a little bit more about that as we go on.
Good one. Thanks, Dan. I think it's really important, like that, building that pasture or slowing that rotation down builds up that pasture cover and actually gives you options. So that's the thing you're finding with that. So yeah, that's well done. What have you changed from your usual autumn management this year?
So yeah, the topic there would be once a day. I do use once a day as a tool, and I have used it a lot of years coming into April and May. This year pulled the trigger earlier, just the condition wasn't there. It's not a trigger for amount of feed on the property, that's got nothing to do with it. So body condition triggered that. And yeah, and also preventative lameness is that's something that can be an issue. By putting the cows on once a day, we're saving the walking 2 Ks a day. You add that up over 60 days, you're talking 120 Ks less walking.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So just coming back to you now, Robbie, what's the current situation on your farm in terms of pasture cover, body condition, rotation lengths?
Situation on farm at the moment, round speed, we're sitting at 50 days and we're trying to push that out towards 60. Is generally the rule at the start of May, 60 to 70 days if we can get there. Cows were condition scored a couple of weeks ago, so sort of mid-April, and they're condition score 4 or just over, which is about 0.2, 0.3 too light really. And we dried off late March, or we dried off progressively actually all the way through summer and into late March, but everything was dried off. Finished milking 24th of March this year. There's been 35 units of N go on early April when it started to get enough moisture that we were getting some greenery around the place, and the plan is another 25 units will go on early to mid-May.
Right. So culls, Robbie? Colour cows?
Cull cows, similar to Dan, Kevin, really, we target sending cull cows early February. If we need to, we have the plan in place, and we pregnancy test early, and we can have 90% of our cull cows gone at the start of February. But this year with this COVID thing in the works and everyone's experience it, we probably on average had them on for 3 weeks longer than we needed to, which wasn't a great situation with the drought as well. So yeah, it definitely affected us, and same thing, they ate grass that they shouldn't have, essentially, that should have been going to something else.
Yeah, so how challenging has this year been for you on that farm this season, you know, relative to other farms in the Waikato, Robbie?
Oh, similar, to be honest. Like I don't think anyone in the North Island was immune to this drought. It was just people got it earlier than others. So yeah, I mean, we're Central North Island. We're generally, you know, call ourselves summer safe. We're definitely not that. We're just probably 3 weeks behind, and possibly coming out the other end, we're a little bit earlier coming out as well. So it just doesn't last quite as long.
Yeah, sure. And what have you changed from your usual autumn management that you would be doing?
So probably haven't changed a lot, but what we have done is that the rules that we've got in place and policies we have on farm, we've had to act quicker on a lot of those. So we always plan to dry off cows 1st of March, depending on condition score. and that comes around round speed and feed on hand essentially, and condition obviously. As far as autumn goes, once a day, culls had to stay on longer. So what we did is we looked at, and these are sort of every 2 weeks, we're looking at, if it rains in 2 weeks, which anyone looking at the forecast in the North Island through the summer period looked, and it seemed like every day 14, it looked like you were going to get a heap of rain, and then they'd push it out, and they'd push it out, and they'd push it out. So we were sort of going, righto, in 2 weeks, if we get rain, what does that look like? Because it's going to take at least 2 or 3 weeks before we've actually got enough pasture cover to milk cows on this. So what we did is we just kept saying that essentially, and we were progressively drying off cows since about the 15th of February, and we were drying off about 10% of the herd, give or take, each week to 10 days, until we got down to 25% early March, and we milked those through to the 24th, 25th March, and we were completely dry by then. We did put a little bit of palm kernel in February, because we thought, well, if it does rain at the end of February, we do want to capture all that autumn growth and put it in the vat, but like most years, it just never came essentially.
Yeah, it didn't arrive. Dan, what are you focusing on now that we're sitting in May in terms of pasture cover targets, body condition score targets? Do you have any targets that you set for the end of May?
Sure. There'll be a pasture cover table come up here. We, just like any other farmer, we monitor our pasture covers weekly, and sometimes at critical times every 5 days. I created this chart that's up here about 15 years ago. There we go. About 15 years ago, as a guide for myself and staff, so we sort of knew where we were sitting at. It's probably reasonably applicable to a stocking rate along the top and days down the side, and it sort of gave us an indication of where we're sitting at when we did a pasture drive or walk, and we could sort of see where we were sitting. So we literally, currently we've won that 40-day round, and we're moving into a 30-day round. We're down to the 2,300 cover at the moment. We're still sitting on that 1,130 cows. So we're getting to a point where we're just not growing enough now. We will finish the season with an 1,800 cover, and we'll make damn sure that happens, which gives us a really good wedge to start the spring with. Top paddock will be sort of 2,300, bottom paddocks will be 1,450. Growth rates over the winter tend to only be about 5 kgs a day. But if you times that by 60 days, we'll be looking at a 2,100 cover to start the season with. And that's great, because it'll give our top paddock sort of that 2,600 cover to get going.
Yep, it's cool. So how did you set those targets? What tools would you have used, or how did you set those targets? Is that experience over time, or are they driven by the feed budget? How have you set those targets that you've got set there?
Yeah, experience as well. I don't want to go into too much detail on exactly how we manage the farm, but I've found if I start the spring with more cover than that 2,100, it can get away on me really quick. And trying to make supplement here in early spring is undesirable on our soils and wet baleage and silage. So it's a fine line between starting the season with too much grass and not enough. But I seem to find we always grow that 5 a day.
Just the same sort of question for you. We're into May now, and duck shooting will be an activity shortly. But what are your sort of targets for heading towards the end of the month? What are you focusing on?
Yeah, so we always work backwards from 20th of July, essentially, Kevin, which is planned starter calving. That's when the spring rotation planner kicks in. So 2,400 cover, 20th of July. And then we bring that 2,400 cover back all the way to the 1st of June as well. So we essentially eat what we grow through winter. And that typically means a 150-day round for us. And so we end up doing a cascading essentially decision tree, I guess you'd call it. So 2,400 cover is non-negotiable, that will happen, and then minimum 4.5 condition score for cows. So every cow over 4.5 is a minimum, and then the aim is that the average of the herd is a condition score 5, which gives you a little bit of wiggle room either way, essentially.
Sure.
So during winter, we essentially know that we're going to grow roughly around 12 to 15 kilos where we are. And hopefully this year is no different, but May's a little bit the same. Once we start getting a bit of moisture in that around, generally in May, we've got a pretty consistent growth rate of around 30 kilos plus whatever N we put on. So we're pretty happy that those targets will be met. What we are possibly just a little bit nervous on this year is cows are at 4 or just over. I don't think they're going to put on half a condition score in May this year. So that's where we make the decision. We do our winter feed budgets, use the DairyNZ tools that are there essentially, put that in, and then it'll spit back to us how much feed or supplement we're going to need to put in. And that goes, for us, it goes in early June because that's the best time for us to feed it as far as putting cows on crop and things like that go.
Right. So your current pasture cover at the moment, Robbie, roughly?
Currently just on 2,000.
Right. So you're looking to put on 300 or 400 kilos this month.
Yeah. And feed cows as well. Hence why this condition score target is probably it's going to be hard work this year, but
yeah, sure. Thanks, Robbie. So just looking ahead into June now, and I'll swing back to you, Dan. I think you told us earlier your pasture cover target at calving was 2,100.
Sure. Yep.
And you're at end of May it was 1,800. So you're going to put on that 300 kilos of cover through the winter. Body condition score, you were aiming to dry the cows off at calving conditions. So that is your target.
Yep. You're right.
And then so there's no huge need to put weight on cows. And then you've got some cows at home over the winter, is that right?
Yeah, so all our cows are wintered on fodder beet. So we're just starting transition on Monday to get them into that. So when they go away to wintering, they're offered 14 kgs of dry matter and about 8, I suppose it's made up of 8 or 9 kgs of beet and the rest being dry feed. We tend to aim to hold the cows rather than to fatten them, but for some reason the fodder beet does have a tendency to put a bit of weight on your cows as well. But we don't bank on that depending on how rough our winter is. Yeah, the R3s and our lighter animals make up 25% of the herd, all stay home for winter and are preferentially fed at home.
Cool, thank you. And then Robbie, I think you've given us yours too, that 2,400 roughly at calving, and aiming for that 5 and 5.5 for the heifers. You're on crop through the winter and crop plus pasture, so is there a rotation length that you work towards?
Yeah, so we work towards 150 days in winter, throughout winter, and we're down at 2.5 cows to the hectare effectively in winter because the heifers aren't on the dairy platform at that stage. Mm-hmm. So what that means is half the cow's diet is grass and half the cow's diet is swede. So it gives us a real opportunity. The cows generally spend most of the day or most of their time in winter on the grass, and they'll go back to the crop just to graze it and then back to grass again, essentially. So it gives them quite a balanced diet.
Yeah.
And then one of the photos that that'll pop up is that's our light mob that we're in with the kids, and so that's about 40 cows out of the herd. That what we're doing there is we're continually pulling the lightest cows out ever since they dried off, and we push them in front of the heaviest herd on the farm. And what that allows us to do is it just allows us to put weight back on those cows. So we're sort of taking a bit of condition possibly off the biggest, best condition cows on farm and putting it on those light ones. So they'll come out of the main herd at probably just slightly under a condition score 4 generally, and this year they're probably 3.5 to 4. We'll push them in front for 2 to 3 weeks, so they're effectively ad-lib grazed, and they'll get back to a condition score 4.5 before they go back into the herd. So just little things like that. They cost us nothing, but it is a management tool, and everyone on farm has to keep their eyes open for those sort of things.
Yeah, so that's reapportioning the feed into those priority animals. You're prioritising those animals and reapportioning feed into those.
Yeah, that's right.
Thinking, kind of bringing it back to the situation that we've got certainly across the North Island at the moment, and possibly in the South Island, but there's probably a number of people out there that aren't going to hit some of those targets that you've been talking about, those end of May targets. So there's probably a gap between where they currently are and where they would like to be at the end of the month under the ideal scenario. So I just wanted to explore with you guys how you might handle that under your pasture first approach. And you've kind of explained that to us, Robbie, with what you with the cow condition. So Dan, how would you do that with body condition score if you were at the situation now where you were a half a score down on where you would sort of think you should need to be? What sort of actions or strategies and tools would you be using to help lift that up?
Yep, it's not too late. Probably milking frequency would be the first thing. Reduce the amount of milk you're pulling off your cows and let them put it on their back. That would be the first one, or the biggest piece of advice. Even if it was to move to milking 3 times in 2 days, at least try and reduce the pressure on those animals. If you're looking at body condition score target as one, that's the big one, really.
Cool. Nice. And then Robbie's mentioned the prioritising those younger animals that are lesser weight and actually targeting those. What about pasture cover, Robbie? If your pasture cover was a couple of 100 kilos down on where you thought it should be, and you were worried about where you were going to be at the end of this month, and you thought, I'm not going to hit that, that cover that I need to have at the end of May, what sort of actions or tools would you be looking at using in that scenario?
Yep. So, like I said before, Kevin, it comes back to that cascading decision tree essentially. So pasture covers, that's our main goal essentially. So if we don't think we're going to get there, we'll just keep working out how we are going to get there by the 20th of July. So if we come up short on the 1st of June, let's say we come up at 22.50, that round length in winter will be slowed down to meet that. And then it comes down to, if you're going to slow that round length down, obviously, at some stage something suffers there. So, can you afford cow condition to suffer? If the cows are not going to meet those targets of a minimum 4.5 for every cow on the farm, then it goes to, okay, we're going to have to put in supplement or dry graze cows out or something like that. So, yeah, that's essentially how we do it. Is cascading decision tree. Where you get to the point where you have no decision, it's probably going and re-looking at the financial budget as well, and what can we do in there essentially, can we afford something, and do we have to jiggle things around? Because the biggest thing you don't want to do is wreck next season by milking too long this season, or getting yourself in a hole, or cows that aren't at condition, having fast round speeds going into next season. Like next season is far more important than this season at this stage.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Any thoughts on that, Dan, from you? That's those are really important points, I think, Robbie.
Yeah, say your covers, your pre-target covers or your average covers were too low at the moment.
Yeah.
Don't be shy to ask for help. There are people that can give advice out there for that. Don't be shy to dry animals off. Take your lights out, dry them off, lighten the load. Use your roadsides, the back paddock, and don't be shy to put that, if you need to put that supplement, it's got to go in. Animal welfare is number one, but also you need to look after those pastures for next year. So you don't want to be trashing your farm or skinning your farm out and wrecking next year, because next year really started, or next season started on the 1st of March this year.
So kind of summarising what I think I've heard from both of you today, you've got those hard and fast calving targets, or even balance date targets, I guess, working right back from calving, and you set interim targets all the way through to just make sure you're going to hit those major targets. And so you measure your progress. If you're not going to hit them, you make the changes, and you're probably proactive, which is really nice to hear. I think you've highlighted the fact that you set those plan starter calving targets in order to drive a high operating profit for the following season, and so that's really important because it comes back to that overall or those overall goals. And maximising operating profit is something you guys are working really strong at. So that allows you that freedom of choice to down the track with those high operating profits. So we can all relate to that. And I think that's probably a really good spot to finish. And I think just a big thanks probably to the Pasture Summit organising committee for organising this. It's probably the first crack at putting something like this out. Huge thanks to you two, Robbie and Dan, for your candidness and honesty today. It's been really nice. And probably thanks to DairyNZ too for helping make this happen as well. I think the Pasture Summit committee were planning on having another one of these maybe in a month or two's time on financial planning and budgeting. So, so watch out for that. And from us three today, see you later.